I want you to leave. Get out of here right now!
Ethan, how can you do this?
You know, people always say weddings are about love, family, and new beginnings. But what if I told you that sometimes a wedding can be the stage for the deepest betrayal and the most unforgettable revenge? Picture this: a mother, heart pounding, standing at the back of a sunlit chapel, only to be told by her own son in front of everyone, "Get out, Mom. My fiancé doesn't want you here." What would you do? Would you fight back? Or would you walk away, holding back a storm that's been brewing for years? My name is Mary, and this is the story of how I was banished from my son's wedding, and how, with just 4 words, I turned the tables in a way no one saw coming. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping tale of betrayal and revenge, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss stories like this, real, raw, and unforgettable. Now, let's get into it. The morning of the wedding was supposed to be perfect. I woke up early, the sun just peeking over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, thinking about all the years that had led to this day. My son, John, was getting married. I'd raised him on my own after his father passed away, working 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. Every scraped knee, every school play, every heartbreak, I was there. And now, as he started a new chapter, I was ready to let him go, to watch him build a life with the woman he loved. But as I slipped into my best dress and pinned a small silver brooch to my collar, a gift from John on my 50th birthday, I couldn't shake a strange feeling in my chest. Something was off. Maybe it was the way John's fiancée, Vanessa, had looked at me during the rehearsal dinner, her eyes cold and calculating. Or maybe it was the way John had barely spoken to me in the weeks leading up to the wedding, always too busy, always distracted. Still, I told myself it was just nerves. Today was about love after all. The chapel was already buzzing when I arrived. Guests milled about, laughter and music filling the air. I spotted my old friend Linda, waving from the second row, and I made my way over, heart swelling with pride. But before I could sit down, Vanessa's mother, a woman with a permanent frown etched into her face, intercepted me. "Mary, you're sitting in the back," she said, her voice sharp as a knife. "Family only in the front rows." I blinked, taken aback. "I am family," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She just sniffed and turned away, leaving me standing there, clutching my purse. I swallowed hard and found a seat near the aisle. Telling myself it didn't matter. I was here for John, not for anyone else. The ceremony began, and as Vanessa walked down the aisle, eyes were on her. She looked beautiful, I'll admit, her dress shimmering in the light, a smile plastered on her face. John stood at the altar, looking nervous but happy. For a moment, I let myself believe that everything would be okay. But then, as the vows were about to begin, Vanessa glanced over at me. Her smile faltered, and she leaned in to whisper something to John. Hesitant, his jaw tightening. Suddenly, he turned, his voice echoing through the chapel. "Get out, Mom. My fiancé doesn't want you here." The words hit me like a slap. The room fell silent. Every head turned. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, my hands trembling. For a split second, I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to remind him of everything I'd done for him. But instead, I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked out, my heels clicking on the marble floor. I could feel the eyes of every guest burning into my back, but I kept my head high. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. I walked to my car, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. I sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. How could he do this to me? After everything? I replayed the moment over and over and mimicked, each time feeling the sting a little deeper. But as the minutes passed, something inside me shifted. The pain hardened into resolve. If John wanted to talk me out of his life, so be it. But he would learn that actions have consequences. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the old family photo on the wall. John as a little boy, grinning up at me, his arms wrapped around my neck. I wondered where that boy had gone, and what this stranger was who had humiliated me in front of everyone. I thought of Booth Ranch, the land that had been in our family for generations, the place where John had taken his first steps, learned to ride a horse, built forts and hayloft. The ranch was mine now, left to me by my late husband, and I'd always assumed John would take it over one day. But now, I wasn't so sure. The phone rang early the next morning, jolting me from my thoughts. I let it ring twice before picking up, my voice steady. Hello? It was John. His voice was tight, almost desperate. Mom, I need the ranch keys. Vanessa and I want to take some photos out there. Can you bring them over? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared to say thief or words that would change everything. I could hear the impatience in John's voice. The way he expected me to just fall in line, as if nothing had happened the day before. For a moment, I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Less than 24 hours ago, he'd thrown me out of his wedding like I was nothing. And now he wanted a favor. The old Mary might have rushed over, keys in hand, eager to please, desperate for a scrap of affection. But that Mary was gone. In her place was Simeon, who had finally learned the cost of self-respect. I let the silence stretch, just long enough for him to start fidgeting on the other end. Then, with a calm I didn't know I possessed, I said the 4 words that would echo in his mind for years to come. Find your own way. There was a pause, heavy and stunned. I could almost picture him standing there, phone pressed to his ear, mouth open in disbelief. He'd never heard me speak to him like that before. For so long, I'd been the reliable one, the fixer, the mother who would do anything for her son. But now, the tables had turned. Mom, what are you talking about? He finally sputtered, his voice rising. We need those keys. Vanessa wants. I cut him off, my tone icy. Vanessa made it clear yesterday that I'm not welcome. So, I won't be helping you today, or any other day, until you learn to treat me with respect. He started to protest, but I hung up, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. I'd done it. I'd finally stood up for myself, and it felt liberating. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I half expected John to show up at my door, demanding the keys, but he didn't. Instead, I got a flurry of text messages, first from him, then from Vanessa, then from her mother, each one more insistent than the last. They needed the ranch for their wedding photos. It was tradition, they said. It would mean so much to Vanessa's family. Couldn't I just let bygones be bygones? I ignored them all. For the first time in years, I put Missile first. I made a big breakfast, took a long walk around the property, and let crisp air clear my head. The ranch was quiet. The only sounds the distant lowing of cattle and the wind rustling through the trees. I thought about all the memories this land held. Birthday parties under the old oak tree, summer nights chasing fireflies, the laughter of a little boy who used to call me his Shero. I wondered if John remembered any of it, or if he'd let Vanessa erase I told by noon. The calls had stopped. I sat on the porch, sipping tea, when a car pulled up at the end of the drive. It was John's. He got out, looking rumpled and tired, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. Vanessa stayed in the car, arms crossed, her face set in a scowl. John walked up the steps, stopping a few feet away. He didn't look at me. Instead, he stared out at the fields, jaw clenched. Mom, I'm sorry about yesterday, he said, the words forced and awkward. But Vanessa really wants those photos. Can't you just let us in? I studied him for a long moment. This was my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I barely recognized. I wanted to reach out, to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I couldn't. Not this time. I'm not your doormat, John, I said quietly. You made your choice yesterday. Actions have consequences. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. It was Vanessa Sidia. She thought it would be better if you weren't there. She didn't want any drama. I shook my head, a sad smile tugging at my lips. The only drama was you yelling at your own mother in front of everyone. That was your choice, not hers. He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. I'm done, John. I've spent my whole life putting you first. Now, I'm putting myself first. The ranch is off limits until you can apologize. Really apologize. And mean it. He stared at me, anger and confusion warring on his face. For a moment, I thought he might lash out, but then he just turned and walked back to the car. Vanessa rolled down the window, her voice sharp. This is ridiculous, Mary. You're ruining our wedding. I met her gaze, my voice steady. No, Vanessa. You did that all by yourself. She huffed and rolled up the window, and they drove away, dust kicking up behind them. I watched them go, a strange sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my own life. The next few days were quiet. Word spread quickly through our small town. Everyone had seen what happened at the wedding, and now every on a cue I'd refused to hand over the ranch keys. Some people called me petty, others called me brave, but I didn't care what they thought. I knew I'd done the right thing. One afternoon, Linda stopped by with a casserole and a sympathetic smile. You okay, Mary? She asked, settling onto the porch swing beside me. I nodded. I think I am. For the first time in years, she squeezed my hand. You did what you had to do. Maybe now John will realize what he's lost. I hope she was right. But deep down, I knew this was about more than just a wedding or a ranch. It was about respect, something I'd given freely, but rarely received in return. That night, as I sat by the fire, I thought about the future. Maybe John would come around. Maybe he wouldn't. But either way, I was done letting other people dictate my worth. I was Mary, mother, grandmother, ranch owner, and survivor. And I was finally ready to live life on my own terms. The days after the wedding stretched on, each one a little leisure than the last. I busied myself with chores around the ranch, mending fences, tending the garden, and checking on the horses. The work was familiar, grounding. It reminded me of who I was before all the drama, before I became John's mom in everyone's eyes. Out here, under the wide Texas sky, I was simply Mary, and that was enough. But the silence from John gnawed at me. I replayed our last conversation over and over, wondering if I'd been too harsh, if maybe I should have just handed over the keys and let them have their perfect photos. Every time doubt crept in, I remembered the look on his face when he told me to leave. The coldness, the finality. No, I told myself, I did the right thing. Sometimes love means letting someone learn the hard way. It wasn't long before the fallout from the wedding began to ripple through the family. My sister Ruth called from across the state, her voice tight with concern. Mary, I heard what happened. Are you all right? I assured her I was fine, but she pressed on. John's been calling everyone, trying to get someone to talk you into giving him the keys. He says Vanessa's furious. She's blaming him for everything. I sighed, feeling a pang of guilt. I'm not trying to punish him, Ruth. I need him to understand that what he did was wrong. I can't keep letting him walk all over me. Ruth was quiet for a moment. You're stronger than you think, Mary. Maybe this is what he needs to finally grow up. Her words echoed in my mind long after we hung up. Maybe this was the lesson John needed. Maybe, just maybe, it was the lesson I needed too. A week passed then too. The phone stayed silent. I saw photos from the wedding on social media. Vanessa beaming in her white dress, John looking stiff and uncomfortable. There were no ranch photos, of course. Instead, they'd posed in front of a generic backdrop at the country club, smiles on their faces strained and forced. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Actions have consequences, I reminded myself. One evening, as I was closing up the barn, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stepped outside, heart pounding. It was John. He got out slowly, looking older than his 28 years. His shoulders slumped. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, staring at the ground. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom, can we talk? I nodded, leading him inside. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd bandaged his scraped knees and helped him with homework all those years ago. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I messed up, he said finally, his voice cracking. I let Vanessa talk me into something I knew was wrong. I was scared of losing her, but I ended up losing you instead. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them away. John, I've always been there for you. Always. But yesterday, you made me feel like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. You do matter, Mom. More than anything. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. For a moment, I just looked at him, searching his face for any sign of the boy I used to know. And there he was, beneath the hurt and the pride, a son who needed his mother, and a mother who needed her son. I forgive you, John, I said softly, but things have to change. I won't let anyone treat me like that again. Not even you. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I promise, Mom, I'll do better. We sat there for a long time, just holding hands, the silence between us finally comfortable. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a start. But as the days went by, it became clear that not everyone was ready to move on. Vanessa refused to speak to me, and her mother spread rumors around town, painting me as a bitter, spiteful woman who'd ruined her son's wedding out of jealousy. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers followed me everywhere, at the grocery store, at church, even at the post office. One afternoon, I ran into Vanessa at the market. She glared at me, her voice dripping with venom. You think you won, don't you? You think you taught John a lesson, but all you did was make him miserable. I met her gaze, refusing to back down. I didn't do this to hurt John. I did it to protect myself. Maybe you should try respecting your own family someday. She scoffed and stormed off, leaving me standing there, heart pounding. I knew I'd made enemies, but I also knew I'd done the right thing for the first time in my life. I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself. As the weeks turned into months, things slowly began to change. John started coming around more often, helping out on the ranch, sharing meals, and even laughing again. It wasn't always easy. There were still awkward silences and unspoken hurts, but we were healing, one day at a time. But Vanessa grew more distant, her resentment simmering just beneath the surface. She refused to visit the ranch, refused to let John bring their wedding photos into their home, refused to let go of her grudge. It was clear that something had shifted between them, something that couldn't be undone. And then, one evening, John showed up at my door, suitcase in hand, eyes red from crying. I can't do it anymore, Mom, he said, voice trembling. I can't keep choosing between you and her. I love Vanessa, but I can't be with someone who hates my family. I pulled him into a hug, holding him tight as he sobbed into Miss Holder. You don't have to choose, John. You just have to choose yourself. As I held my son, I realized that sometimes the great revenge isn't about getting even. It's about reclaiming your power, your dignity, and your peace. And in that moment, I knew I'd done just that. The days after John moved back in were a strange mix of comfort and uncertainty. The ranch, once echoing with loneliness, now felt alive again. We fell into a new rhythm. Early mornings feeding the animals, afternoons fixing fences, evenings sharing stories over steaming bowls of stew. It was almost like old times, except for the heaviness that lingered in the air. Thin-spoken questions about what would come next. John tried to keep in touch with Vanessa, but their conversations grew shorter, more strained. I could see the pain in his eyes every time he checked his phone, hoping for a message that never came. I wanted to comfort him, to tell him that love shouldn't hurt this much. But I knew he had to find his own way through the heartbreak. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, John finally spoke. I keep thinking about that day, Mom. Feuding. I don't know what came over me. I wanted everything to be perfect for Vanessa. I thought if I did what she wanted, she'd be happy. But I lost sight of what really mattered. I reached over and squeezed his hand. We all make mistakes, John. What matters is what we do next. He nodded, wiping away a tear. I want to make things right. Not just with you, but with myself. I want to be the kind of man Dad would be proud of. Those words hit me hard. For years, I'd worried that John would never find his own strength, that he'd always let others dictate his happiness. But now, I saw a glimmer of the man he was meant to be. Resilient, compassionate, and finally, truly independent. As the weeks passed, John threw himself into ranch work. He learned how to repair the old tractor, helped me plant a new vegetable garden, and even started volunteering at the local animal shelter. The townsfolk, who had once whispered behind my back, began to see the change in him. Slowly, the rumors faded, replaced by nods of respect and friendly waves, but Vanessa was not so easily swayed. She sent John angry texts, accusing him of abandoning her, of choosing his mother over his wife. She even showed up at the ranch one afternoon, her car kicking up dust as she screeched to a halt in the driveway. I watched from the porch as John walked out to meet her. Their voices carried on the wind, hers sharp and accusing, his calm but resolute. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough to know that this was the end. "You can't control me anymore, Vanessa," John said, his voice steady. "I love you, but I won't let you treat my family like dirt. I won't let you treat me like that either." Vanessa's face twisted in anger. "You'll regret this, John. You'll regret choosing her over me." He shook his head. "No, I won't. Not anymore." She stormed back to her car and sped off, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. John stood there for a long moment, shoulders squared, head held high. When he finally came back inside, he looked lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, voice thick with emotion, "for everything." I hugged him tight, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed. "I'm proud of you, John, more than you'll ever know." Life settled into a new normal after that. John found a job at a nearby ranch, eager to prove himself outside the shadow of our family name. He made new friends, reconnected with old ones, and slowly began to heal. I watched him grow, not just as a son, but as a man, one who had finally learned the value of respect, both for himself and for others. But the story didn't end there. Vanessa, unable to let go of her grudge, began spreading new rumors around town. She claimed I'd manipulated Tanjin, that I'd driven a wedge between them out of jealousy and spite. At first, I tried to ignore it, but the whispers grew louder, more vicious. Some people believed her, others didn't, but I refused to let her poison my life any longer. One afternoon, I received a letter from Vanessa's lawyer. She was contesting the ownership of the ranch, claiming that John had promised to owe her as part of their marriage. The audacity of it took my breath away. Thizland had been in my family for generations, passed down from mother to daughter, father to son. It was my legacy, my home. And now, she wanted to take it from me. I could have panicked, could have let fear take over. But instead, I called my own lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Gloria who'd helped me settle my husband's estate years before. Together, we gathered every deed, every document, every scrap of evidence proving my sole ownership of the ranch. The legal battle was ugly. Vanessa dragged John's name through the mud, painting him as a weak, manipulated mama's boy. She tried to turn the town against me, but I stood my ground. I attended every hearing, head held high, refusing to be intimidated. John testified on my behalf, his voice clear and unwavering. "The ranch belongs to my mother. She built it, she maintained it, and she deserves to keep it. I made mistakes, but I won't let anyone take away what's rightfully hers." In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Vanessa's claims were dismissed, and she was ordered to pay my legal fees. The victory was bittersweet. I'd won, but at the cost of so much pain and heartache. But as I stood on the porch that evening, watching the sun set over the fields, I realized that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. I'd faced betrayal, humiliation, and loss, but I'd come out the other side, unbroken. And as for revenge, sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well, standing tall, holding your head high, and refusing to let anyone steal your joy. The months that followed the court victory were a time of quiet rebuilding. The ranch, once a symbol of old wounds and family strife, became a place of healing. I poured my energy into the land, planting wildflowers along fence lines, repainting the barn a cheerful red, and hosting Sunday dinners for friends and neighbors who had stood by me. The laughter that filled the house was a balm to my soul, a reminder that life could be beautiful again. John flourished too. He threw himself into his new job, earning the respect of his boss and co-workers. He even started dating again, this time choosing someone kind and genuine, a local nurse named Julia who brought out the best in him. She was warm, funny, and unafraid to get her hands dirty on the ranch. The first time she joined us for dinner, she brought a homemade pea and a bouquet of sunflowers, and I saw a light in John's eyes that I hadn't seen in years. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance, Julia turned to me and said, "Mary, you have a beautiful home. I can see why you fought so hard to keep it." Her words touched me deeply. "Thank you, Julia. This place means everything to me. It's not just land. It's memories, family, and a second chance." John squeezed my hand, his gratitude unspoken but clear. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. But peace, as I'd learned, is often hard won. Vanessa, unable to keep defeat, continued her campaign of bitterness. She posted cryptic messages online, hinting at secrets and betrayals, trying to stir up trouble where there was none. Some people still whispered, but most had grown tired of drama. The town had seen the truth play out in court, and they knew who I was. A woman who had loved fiercely, fought bravely, and refused to be broken. One afternoon, as I was tending the garden, a car pulled up the drive. I recognized the sleek black sedan immediately, Vanessa's. She stepped out, dressed in designer clothes that looked out of place against the dusty backdrop of the ranch. Her face was hard, her eyes cold. I stood up, wiping my hands on my jeans. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She looked around, her lips curling in disdain. "I came to see if you'd changed your mind. About the ranch, about John, about everything." I shook my head, my voice calm. "Nothing's changed. The ranch is mine. John is happy. You need to move on." She laughed, a bitter sound. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you're better than me." I met her gaze unflinching. "It's not about winning or losing. It's about respect. Something you never understood." She glared at me, her anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You'll regret this, Mary. You'll end up alone, just like you started." I smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile. "I'm not alone, Vanessa. I have my son, my friends, and my home. I have everything I need." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned on her heel and stormed back to her car. As she drove away, I felt a weight lift from Miss Holders. I knew, deep down, that this was the last time she would ever set foot on my land. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, John joined me on the porch. He handed me a small box, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. He grinned, a little sheepish. "Open it." Inside was a silver locket, engraved with the words, "To the strongest woman I know." I opened it to find a tiny photo of John as a boy on one side, and a recent photo of the two of us on the other. Tears filled my eyes as I hugged him. "Thank you, John. This means more than you'll ever know." He held me close. "I'm sorry for everything, Mom. I promise I'll never let anyone come between us again." We sat together, watching the stars appear one by one, the air filled with the scent of wildflowers and the sound of crickets. In that moment, I knew that I had not only survived the storm, I had come out stronger, wiser, and more loved than ever before. But the story of my revenge wasn't just about standing up to Vanessa or reclaiming my land. It was about reclaiming myself, my dignity, my worth, my voice. It was about teaching my son the value of respect, and showing me community that no one, no matter how powerful or entitled, could take away had I had built with my own two hands. And as the night deepened and the world grew quiet, I realized that sometimes the most unforgettable revenge is simply living your truth, refusing to be silenced, and loving yourself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't value you. The seasons changed, and with them, so did the rhythm of life on the ranch. Spring brought new calves and wildflowers, summer brought long days and laughter, and autumn painted the fields gold and amber. Each day, I found myself growing stronger, more certain of who I was and what I deserved. The evening of that wedding day faded, replaced by a quiet pride in how far I'd come. John and Julia's relationship blossomed. She became a regular fixture at the ranch, her laughter echoing through the halls, her kindness a balm to old wounds. She and I would spend afternoons baking pies or attending the garden, sharing stories and secrets. Sometimes I'd catch John watching us from the porch, a soft smile on his face, and I knew he was finally at peace. One crisp October morning, as I was gathering eggs from the hen-house, John approached me, his face serious. "Mom, there's something I want to talk to you about." I set down my basket and wiped my hands. "What is it, honey?" He took a deep breath. "Julia and I, we want to get married. But this time, we want to do it right. No secrets. No drama. We want you there, front and center. Will you give us your blessing?" Tears sprang to my eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. Of course, John. Nothing would make me happier. The wedding was a simple affair, held under the old oak tree at heart of the ranch. Friends and family gathered, the air filled with music and laughter. Julia walked down the aisle in a dress she'd sewn herself, wildflowers in her hair. John waited for her, his eyes shining with love and gratitude. And this time, I sat in the front row, surrounded by people who cherished me, my heart full to bursting data as they exchanged vows. I felt a deep sense of closure. Few wounds of the past had healed, replaced by something stronger, an unbreakable bond between mother and son, forged in the fires of hardship and forgiveness. After the ceremony, as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed with color, John pulled me aside. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. For standing up for yourself, for teaching me what real love looks like. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you." I hugged him tight, my heart overflowing. "You found your way, John. That's all I ever wanted." The celebration lasted long into the night. We danced under the stars, shared stories around the bonfire, and toasted to new beginnings. Julia's family embraced me as one of their own, and for the first time in years, I felt truly, completely at home. But even as I reveled in this newfound happiness, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal at John's first wedding had nearly broken me, but it had also set me free. By refusing to be treated as less than I was worth, I had reclaimed my power, and in doing so, I had taught John to do the same. Vanessa, meanwhile, faded from our lives like a bad dream. She moved away, chasing new ambitions in a distant city. Occasionally, I'd hear rumors, another failed relationship, another bridge burned, but I no longer felt anger or resentment. I simply wished her peace, hoping she would one day find the happiness she'd tried so hard to steal from others. The ranch thrived, becoming a gathering place for friends, family, and neighbors. We hosted harvest festivals, charity events, and Sunday picnics. Children played in the fields, couples strolled hand in hand, and laughter filled the air. The land that had once been a battleground was now a sanctuary, a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance, Julia joined me, a cup of tea in her hands. "You know, Mary, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. You turned heartbreak into hope, and you never let anyone take away your light." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my bones. Life's too short to let bitterness win. I learned that the hard way, but I also learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well. She nodded, her eyes shining. "You're an inspiration to all of us." As the stars blinked to life overhead, I thought about the legacy I would leave behind, not just the ranch, but the lessons I'd passed on. I wanted John and Julia, and any grandchildren who might come, to know that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, time and time again, and refusing to let anyone else define your worth. The next morning, I woke to the sound of laughter drifting in from the kitchen. John and Julia were making breakfast, their voices mingling in a sweet, familiar harmony. I paused in the doorway, watching them move together with an ease that spoke of deep love and trust. My heart swelled with pride as I joined them at the table. John handed me a mug of coffee. "To new beginnings, Mom." I raised my cup, smiling. "To new beginnings, and to never letting anyone tell us where we belong." We clinked our mugs together, the sound ringing out like a promise. And so, my story comes full circle. I was cast out, humiliated, and betrayed, but I rose from the ashes, stronger than ever. I found my voice, reclaimed my life, and taught my son the true meaning of respect and love. My revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was quiet, steady, and unstoppable. It was the life I built, the love I nurtured, and the peace I found within myself. If you've ever been told you're not enough, if you've ever been pushed aside or made to feel small, remember this. You have the power to write your own ending. Stand tall, speak your truth, and never, ever let anyone steal your light. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and unforgettables. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply living your best life.